You are listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of ZenTek Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call Podcast with Jim and Rocco from ZenTek Consultants. I am Jim, your joyously charming host, and with me, as always, is my partner,
Rocco. And what on earth about you is charming?
Everything, but you don't recognize it, and you're mean to me. See how mean he is to me, people? And that's why I make him suffer, and all of you with him, through the engineering joke of the week. All right, Rocco, you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
All right. What is the formal definition of a software engineer?
I don't know. What is it?
It's a machine that converts coffee into code. Huh? Ah, terrible joke. All right.
Yes.
But I chose that one specifically today because we have a first-time guest on the show, one of our very own from here at ZenTek, Dan Coppinger, who is a senior technical specialist here at ZenTek, is here to talk with us about the process of developing a construction-focused software app from scratch. So, Dan, man, thanks for being here. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I mean, not that I gave him much choice. I kind of ordered him to be here, but still, it's nice that he didn't fight me. So, all right, folks. So Dan is here because he's the brain behind ZenTek's latest offering, right? Which is a pre-construction focused bid tracking app called ZenBidTracker. And I, being the geek that I am, I thought that it would be really cool to talk about all of the work that went into developing that app. But before we get into that, though, let's learn a little bit about Dan. So, Dan, why don't you tell all the listeners, a little bit about your background and how you were unfortunate enough to wind up working with us here at ZenTek, and what do you primarily do here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have a pretty extensive background in commercial construction. And what's unique about my experience is that I've worked in pretty much every phase of the industry. So I started off in the field. I worked in project management for a few years. I've worked in accounting and finance. I've done some estimating, and I've done a lot of training. And in working in all of those roles, I've learned a multitude of software interfaces in the industry. And so that experience kind of aligns with a lot of the consulting and training that I do here at ZenTek.
That works out. We're definitely a fan of it, no doubt. So, So, look, I want to talk about our new ZenBidTracker app today, but I don't necessarily want to get into the details of what that does, right? You can find the info on that on our website, and we are actually going to have one of our primary users of the app on in just a few episodes here to kind of talk about how awesome it is and why you all need to have it for your toolkits. But today I really wanted to talk about, I guess, the process, right, that goes into developing a construction-focused app like ZenBidTracker. And how do we get that from kind of initial concept all the way down to final product, right? And since Dan is the man who built this tool from the ground up, we'll kind of let him walk us through it all. So Dan, can you kind of give us a brief overview of what ZenBidTracker does? And then where did the original concept for it come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So ZenBidTracker is a standalone web-based application. It allows you to track and manage the data for not only your incoming bids, but your outgoing bids and estimates. So the whole point is it's meant to be a very simple, user-friendly application that anyone with half a brain can just jump in and figure out in a couple of minutes. The idea was born out of actually you wanting to build here at ZenTek a full-blown project management system. We quickly learned
Dan threatened to shoot me if I tried.
Yeah. Right, and we learned that if you're going to try to build a piece of software as a product, you got to start small. We're a small outfit. there's only a handful of us here, right? We don't have a huge team and several years to build out a project management system. And I had a client about a year ago I was working with that needed something to track their bids. At the time, they were using Bluebeam Construction Cloud's submittal log to track their bids. Uh, we were able to pivot them from that to Microsoft Excel, but even then, Excel was confusing and frustrating for them. So that's where the idea came from. It was like, all right, well, we see a need for something like this, a bid tracker application. So we were kind of just off to the races from there.
Yep. And what's really interesting to me is that we originally started out with the concept, and again, this was my bad idea, but we started off with the concept of building a bid tracking process using Microsoft Teams and the related Microsoft 365 apps, right? With the idea that we could give this as wide a user base as we could possibly get, right? We all use the Microsoft sets. Unfortunately, that ecosystem, it's just not built to support extended functionality like this once you kind of move past a very small localized team of users, right? The need, I guess, to kind of handle a lot of data from multiple users across your company, it pretty much killed the entire concept, and we were about to shut it down until Dan came to us with an idea to kind of resurrect this project. So Dan, you actually did. You kind of took it on your own to figure out how this could work, right? What tools did you see out on the market that kind of led you to the development process that you used? And what can you tell all our listeners about what you actually did?
Yeah, so that's interesting. After letting go of, the Microsoft suite of Power Apps, which is great for internal use, but we're trying to create a product that we can ship and other people, external companies can actually use. So the thought was to just program and code the application using JavaScript and CSS and then Google's Firebase backend to manage and store the data. So I've worked with Java in the past, writing scripts, small scripts for Bluebeam, and I've written VBA code for Excel macros as part of some of the things I've done for clients that we worked with at ZenTek, but I am by no means a programmer. And, before creating this app, I've also never used Firebase before. So suffice it to say, there was a major learning curve here. And I think that just a small one, right? I think the big thing for me was also figuring out how to properly leverage AI, especially the more powerful language models.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So Rocco, let's wake you up sitting over there in the corner. Right? From a business standpoint, right? We had a lot of conversations about potential construction processes, right? In this thought process that we could develop apps for. What was kind of the driver behind us settling on, right, the pre-construction bid tracking aspect?
Yeah, well, for one, we play in the construction space every day, right? We talk to everyone from small GCs all the way up to your large construction firms, and we saw that particularly in the small to medium space, there was interest in a solution like this. We spoke with a number of our specific customers, and there was an interest, and there was a need and an interest for a simple solution, right? Because there's so many applications out there and so many programs that we're even involved with every day that do so much. But so many of them are overkill, particularly for the small to medium-sized firm, and so that's what drove the development of BidTracker here.
Yep. Yeah, like so you got those great big, CM systems like, Procore and ACC and those, and they're fantastic. But yeah, for a small, medium-sized guy, it's more than they need. So look, kind of going back to what Dan was just referencing, I think earlier, right? One of the things that really impressed me with the buildup of the ZenBidTracker app was that Dan was able to use AI, right, as a super powerful assistant, right, to help him develop a really impressive advanced tool that is easy enough for anybody to use, right, with really no training involved, right? It's a very intuitive tool that's just simple. And I like the way, Dan, that you were able to use the AI, not not as a coder replacement, right, but as an assistant to help you kind of do things better, faster, quicker. So how did AI tools kind of play into the development process for you while you were building out the BidTracker?
Well, they were absolutely critical. I don't think I would have been able to build this app without them. A key piece of software that I stumbled upon while building this application was an app called Cursor, which is essentially a clone of Visual Studio. And if you've worked with Visual Studio before, that's where you do the primary coding and testing, whatever you're building. The big difference that Cursor has is that it integrates with the larger language models, so GPT, Grok, Claude, and so that Cursor will actually apply any code that you prompt your language model to create for you. And in doing so, that was an incredible time saver. There are a lot of very interesting and new and powerful AI-based tools that you can use. Again, major learning curve with this stuff. I think a huge thing is being able to prompt your AI properly. But I think, when it came to AI, it's so extraordinarily powerful, and I didn't even realize how powerful it was until starting to build this application.
It's amazing that you were able to do, like you said, coming from minimal coding background to be able to put something like this together. Like I said, it's the interesting part about the AI, right? And everybody who listens to the show knows I'm not a big fan of AI, and I think it's oversold in a lot of cases. But I think one of the things that we all have to realize is that it's going to be a vital assistant for us in the next few decades. I mean, I don't see it taking everybody's jobs, you know what I mean? But man, can it make your job easier? Right? It still needs that guiding hand like Dan to kind of tell it where to go and what to look for and how to structure things. All right, I tell you what, so let's take a quick break for a commercial. And when we get back, I kind of want to get Dan's input on the kind of the step-by-step workflow of developing an advanced construction app. All right, so stand by, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. Hey guys, it's Jim and Rocco from ZenTek Consultants, and we want to talk to you guys about our managed contact or construction technology services that we offer here at ZenTek. Look, we're all working with a million different software systems. We're all trying to integrate them and get them to communicate and collaborate and work together. And you know what? The answer isn't always more software. That usually just brings more headaches. What we try to do is work with you as your managed construction technology service provider to help you integrate and develop all the software systems and workflow processes that you need using the software that you already have. We can help you guys with your project management, estimating, ERP systems, just about any workflow that you have to help it all work together and get your folks working the way you need them to. So let's start that conversation. So Rocco, how do people reach out to us and get the ball rolling with our contact services?
Yeah, hit up our website, ZenTekConsultants.net. If you go under the services section, you'll be able to see those services listed there. You could always give us a call, 866-824-4459, or drop us an email, sales@ZenTekConsultants.net.
There you go. All the construction technology management help that you need but have not been able to find or afford is just a single phone call away with Managed Contact Services by ZenTek Consultants. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking with Dan Coppinger from right here at ZenTek today about the process that he went through in developing our new ZenBidTracker construction app. And in the top of the show, we covered the AI and kind of the coding side of the process. But I think in this half, I want to kind of delve a little bit into the actual workflow process, right, of laying out and building a functional construction software. So Dan, let's kind of start with the algorithm of ZenBidTracker, right? How did you develop and connect all of the different steps and the features that are included in this program, right? I mean, those things, even with AI, right? Those things just don't randomly connect themselves, do they?
No. Unfortunately, they do not. So when it came to building this, it's kind of funny. I went through 2 iterations of building this application. The first time I built this with everything essentially in one JavaScript file. And as you recall, I think I had about 1,800 lines of code before I couldn't go any further. This thing was just stacked on top of each other, and any small change basically was like a game of Jenga. I'd pull out a block and the whole thing would collapse. So no, that was one of those things where we had to go back to the drawing board and we had to scrap things. And eventually what I did was create multiple components and Java files for various aspects of the application. But in doing so, you obviously need to know what those components are, right? And you start from the base, which in this case was our bid table that tracks all of the data, that holds all of our data for our bids, right? So it has our columns, it has our rows, it has everything involved in terms of what we want or what our clients will want to see in terms of our bids. So our project numbers, our job numbers, our client names, our locations, our statuses, all of that is within the bid table. But then I need to create components for different aspects when I add on top of the bid table, right? We can't just have a screen with a bunch of data. We need this application to work. You need to be able to navigate it. So we have a component for our bid forms to create new bids, our contact lists, our sidebar for navigation throughout the application, a component for our account settings, for our attachments when we add PDF attachments and URL links, for our headers. Everything that is involved in this application is created in its own individual component that then we have a bunch of components reading each other. And the great thing about that is that not only do I know when something breaks, I know which component to fix, but if something does break, it's not going to break or render useless any other component that I've built. So it made the building process much easier and streamlined the whole thing now that I have this broken down into individual pieces. You can see it as almost like building a house. You're not going to make your foundation one cinder block, right? If you do that, it's going to fall over pretty quickly. So it needs to have a good foundation of a bunch of pieces working together.
That makes sense. It's almost like, if you're dealing with explosives, right? You want to test your explosives in different lead-lined brick rooms. You don't want, big open floor plan and testing them. Better to isolate when something blows up and messes up one room. You can fix that one room.
Exactly.
So, all right, good. No, that's a good setup. And it made a huge difference when you structured it that way, because you were able to also, while we were working through the workflow, you're able to move and change things. Say, okay, this needs to connect to that, then this can go to here. And, it was a really nice, it was a big step back. And it took a lot of work for us to kind of scrap that massive, all that code you had done. But yeah, going into a modular structure, I think anybody who's looking at doing something like this, that is step one. It's got to be modularized. So, so thinking about this, Dan, I think, a big part of this program, the ZenBidTracker, it's the analytics dashboards, right, that we have built in, right, and kind of presenting all of the information that our clients are going to need to track in a real-time graphic interface, right, that's easy to understand and work with, and that sounds easy on the surface, and that is kind of how I treated it when I told Dan, just make it do this, make it do that, like it was no big deal. But he had to put a lot of effort into building a graphic presentation format that anybody could work with and just understand at a glance. So Dan, what went into actively developing the graphic analytics parts of the bid tracker, and kind of what were the biggest struggles that you faced there?
Yeah, so the graphics and analytics go hand in hand, and I think it actually wasn't so much the graphic aspect that was difficult about it when it came to analytics, but it was more so the proper transferring of data and the unique calculations involved to get the right output for the numbers. And I was lucky enough to create graphics that looked pretty good from the outset, and from there it was kind of just some minor tweaks here and there. But the difficult part is making sure that we're getting the data or the numbers, the output of what we need for the application to work. What our users want to see, right? They want to see win percentage, and they want to see their buyout profits. And all of these things require taking pieces of data from various aspects of the application and making cross calculations to get that correct output.
Yeah, it goes back to like what you were saying earlier, right? Where you put everything into their own modules or buckets. Now you got to take two items from that bucket and multiply and divide by an item from that bucket and these 6 from that bucket over there. So
right.
Yeah, not a simple thing. And like I said, yeah, it looks great. It's real easy to understand, but it fascinates me the amount of work that you put into the back end with the the analytics and the calculations and the formulas was impressive. All right, so Rocco, right? We actually did a full beta testing cycle of ZenBidTracker, right, to kind of make sure it worked well for real world users before we launched. What was the feedback we got from the testers? And while we're at it, we'll throw in a little. So where can folks go to try out a free demo of the BidTracker for their own company?
Yeah, so I will admit that I was a bit of a pain in the behind with both Dan and Jim and really pushing that we had real customers beta testing the product. And first of all, it didn't take much to get a good handful of good customers and to beta test for us. And once they got in, I mean, they loved it, and they do love it. We have a number of customers that are using the product already. One who's actually created a video on our website, and he's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks, like Jim said. So it was definitely important and critical to have folks beta test. And how do you access it and see more details? Of course, our website, ZenTekConsultants.net. If you go under software, you'll be able to find it there. And we're happy to set up a demo for you guys. You could also access a short trial yourselves. So check it out.
See, you're disappointing me, Rocco. I was trusting you to get the right. Dan, what's the demo site? Where do they go?
Oh, the demo site.
The demo site is ZenBidUp.web.app.
There we go. ZenBidUp. You can hit it and you can test it. It's completely free. You can test it and use the fully functional program. So look, as you guys can hear, right, Dan is one of my senior tech guys here for a reason. He always finds a way to make almost anything I ask of him work, right? And honestly, with the ZenBidTracker, he went way above and beyond, right? This wasn't a case of what he normally do, Rich, like you said, developing client-specific workflows or custom tools or JavaScript. He had to kind of start with a simple concept that we all came up with together, and then he had to do all the heavy lifting of coding an entirely new software program, essentially from nothing. And that meant building databases and sign up and help processes and analytics and a GUI, right? A user interface and, extended cost and comparison calculations, right? All of this to work in this cohesive and logical manner. And not only did he, have to figure out what tools and processes he could use to do all of those things, right? He had to kind of figure that out from scratch, right? Not even having the tools, right? And I look at that and think of it like, it's like having to go out and forge your own hammer and nails and then, cutting and milling your own lumber and even developing a chemical formula, on how to make paint before you start building a house. And I think that kind of gives you guys the scope of what Dan really had to accomplish here, and he did it amazingly well. So Dan, what do you think was the biggest learning curve or struggle for you while building out the ZenBidTracker, right? Which process gave you that biggest, yeah, I did it moment, right, when it finally worked?
That's a very good question. I think if you were building something, if you're programming, luckily this day and age we do have AI that we can leverage, but you still need to learn how to read and edit the code that is being written, right? You can rely upon your AI to write a good amount of your code, but you still need to know what the heck is being written and where to go to debug and make changes and edits to get you where you need to be. That's the first thing. The second thing is being able to and learning how to prompt your AI correctly. Okay, AI is great when you are iterating in small steps. But what you find, and a lot of people do this, they will go to a language model, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok, they'll say, I want you to do this for me. And it's a huge undertaking. And then the AI will spit out something that flops on its face, and then most people will just give up and say, this is worthless. I'm never going to touch this again. I'll just go back to the old way of doing things, right? AI is not going to be able to get you from A to Z, right? It can get you from A to B, from B to C, from C to D until you get to Z, but you can't. I wish I would be able to just ask an AI and be like, hey, can you just build me a bid tracker that's awesome and user friendly? And then it just spits one out. It's not the way.
I don't know what the problem is. I asked that of you and you did it for me. What's...
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm a human being who took a lot of time to do this. But, maybe one day we get there, but it's not how it works now. So you need to be able to prompt and be very concise and convey exactly what you need at that time from the AI to give it to you. So those are the two big things in terms of learning curve. The second question you had is the big I did it moment. And I think when it comes to programming anything, there's just 1,000 little ones because you're always trying to figure out just a small thing, a small problem that you're having, and you might spend hours on it until you realize it's just one little character in your code that was off. You make the change and it works, and then you're like, got it. So there's definitely a lot of those whenever you're building an application.
Okay, good. All right, folks. So yeah, as listeners know, I do this with all our guests, right? Even the ones that work for me. I like to give them a chance to kind of tell us something about the day's topic that I didn't think to ask. So Dan, let's do that. What else do you think that people should know about, coding out a construction app that maybe you wished you had known before going into this?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I tried to build this and it didn't work and we had to scrap it. The second time I went about it, I had an understanding of what this application is and what it does. And I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is to create a plan. You can create what is known as a product requirements document. So your product requirements is going to have the overview of the application, the goals and the objectives of this application, maybe your target audience, the requirements, what's involved in the application, right? Authentication and user management, bid management, what types of bid data do we want to see in our columns, right? Project numbers, proposed amounts, all of our numbers, our sub bids that are included. The sub bid management, the address books, all of these things broken down into a plan. So then you have your PRD and you can use this document before you even begin coding. You can feed this into your AI and say, hey, this is what I'm building. This is the plan. So now you have your assistant, your AI, and you on the same page as to what you're going to build, instead of just saying like, oh, I need this code and I need something to do this and this and this. It's all laid out in one nice cohesive document where it has all of your requirements and everything that you're going to do prior to you actually doing it, right? It's not the idea of the application that matters. It's the 1,000 little ideas that make it into one application. So try to think deeply about those things, write them down, create your plan, and then get started.
I like it. That's good. And now that you have that all laid out, it means the next app that you do, it's going to take half the time, right?
Yeah, we'll see about that. Not making any promises.
No promises. Good answer. All right, folks. So with that, we're going to get out of here and let you all go try out the free ZenBidTracker demo. But before we go, I do want to thank Dan one more time for being here to walk us through what I think is really a cool and impressive process that I just don't think, those of us who are in the construction, we don't get to hear enough about. So Dan, thank you for being on today and explaining the whole process for us, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, folks.
Thank you, Dan.
With that, we're going to get out of here, and we'll catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of ZenTek Consultants. That's Rocco and I. ZenTek Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. ZenTek strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to ZenTek?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentekconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentekconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.